Soundstripe.
Hi, I'm Shelley Cox, founder of the Regional Collective, where we're all about empowering entrepreneurs like you.
Soundstripe.
Our podcast is for anyone navigating the world of small business, especially in regional areas. I'm based in the Barossa in South Australia, a place where I love, have 3 young children, and also play community club netball. My previous career as a winemaker has taken me all over the world, to New Zealand, Japan, the USA, and all around Australia, but there's no place like home. I've started not 1, but 4 businesses from the ground up since 2018 and have helped over 50 other small and micro businesses, and I can't wait to help share my lessons with you. Over the coming weeks and months, you'll hear tales of success, challenges, and community spirit in small and micro businesses. Let's redefine small business with big hearts and determined hustle and be inspired to thrive. Today, we're joined by Angela Pickett of Angela Pickett Copywriting to explore the world of branding. Ange is a seasoned copywriter and SEO expert who's here to share her wealth of knowledge with us. She's helped countless businesses boost their online presence and really nail down their messaging. In this episode, we're getting real about the nitty-gritty of brand identity, from figuring out what your brand stands for to making sure everything looks slick and professional, where Ange has got some pearls of wisdom for us. We're talking practical tips and achievable actions that any small or micro business can get started with. So whether you're just starting out or you've been around the block a few times, this episode is for you. So grab a cup of coffee, get comfy, and let's jump right in. So thank you for joining us today, Ange.
Thank you for having me.
So Angela Pickett, copywriter, can you give us a little bit behind your brand, which is your personal name brand as well, and also how you established your brand as a copywriter?
Yeah, so I've been a copywriter for almost 5 years since I sort of set up, and I did decide to go with my name as my brand, partly because it was only ever going to be me, even though I do occasionally bring people in to work with me. But I just decided that was something that, couldn't be copied. It is memorable, it's easier to find, and it just made it easier to show up as who I was. I wasn't having to sort of put on a persona. And I think as a micro business, as a solo business owner, it was really important for me to kind of embrace that this was me. And I try and do that on anywhere I show up. It's very much who I am, and it makes it so much easier. I think that was the thing that I learned. And so it's very much me sharing my story and my experience. I was a diplomat for 15 years, and so I bring to my business a lot of that. So that enthusiasm for working with small business, being organised, and they're some of my, I guess the values that form my business.
And I think you can see that as well with, when you do show up, whether you're doing public speaking or on Zoom calls or masterclasses or podcasts, it's very much what you see is what you get, which I think is the key to authentic people, authentic branding. Have you found that you've always been able to do that in your business, or was there a learning curve to start off with?
I think there was a learning curve, because I think there's always that risk when you start out. You look at what everyone else is doing, and there is that sense of the way I should be. Yeah. Probably not so much in my copywriting business, but after I left the Foreign Service and I started another business, I had this idea that I was a consultant, and I had this idea of a certain level of professionalism that I needed to show. And I found it really hard to show up in that way. It just didn't feel like me, and it didn't feel comfortable, and it wasn't fun. Yeah. And I think that's it. When we're, running a business is hard. And if you have to add that layer on of then trying to be something that you're not, it's just going to make it really, really difficult, and it will make you second guess everything you're doing, whether it's public speaking or showing up on a podcast or recording a video or, even and writing a social media post. So I think that's the real key and when you're a solo business owner, working out, well, why are you doing what you do? Like, why did you come to it? Because that's what makes you what makes you unique? And I think that's the risk. You kind of have to block out all that noise and perhaps unfollow all those people in your industry and kind of run your own race.
Yeah. And why is it crucial for a small and micro business, and particularly in startups, to establish a brand identity? So what can kind of make up that brand identity, and why is that important?
I think it's really key, and obviously as a copywriter, I'm coming up from the story side of it and the words side of it. And I think a lot of people get a bit confused. There's a sense that their brand is that visual branding, and people get really caught up on that when they start their business. It's super exciting. We all love a new logo, we love new colours, and we got a pretty website, and we do socials. But a lot of that, and particularly, it's fine when you're starting out and you're doing it on your, yourself. But if you don't really know the story behind it, chances are you're going to end up with a real mishmash of stuff, and it'll just be like, oh, that's a pretty tile, I'll use that today. When you start working with other people, that's really crucial. And, that's the visuals, because your graphic designer needs to, for them to come up with an identity, they need to understand. Your photographer's going to want to see that as well.
It forms a brief almost, doesn't it, for your brand to then, when you're looking at growing or scaling, because that's what we've engaged your services as a copywriter. And, we've had to do pre-work, but that means that your work is so much more connected to what the outcome is. But if we weren't clear on what our brand was, then it wasn't going to help you
100%.
Deliver on your project.
And it's the same whether it's the words or the visuals. You really need to, and at the base of it, and it's one of the first things I ask people when we're really trying to establish, who they are and what is, who are you, what do you do, and why do you do it better than anyone else? That's that unique service proposition. And I think every business needs to start with that and really understand, and then understand what their values are. Why are you doing this? And I think what drives you, because when we're solo business owners or micro business owners, it's hard, and there has to be something that's driving it. And so it's really important, I think, to understand that. And then the next level on that is really understanding, well, what is it that you're providing? What problem are you solving for people? And I think when you're really clear on the problem that you're solving, the solution that you're delivering, and you can clearly speak about that, it makes it so much easier for people to connect with you and understand you. And find the right people, because you're not, and I think the most important thing is to realize, particularly as solo or small business owners, micro business owners, particularly when you're starting out, you don't need everyone.
No. And,
if you appeal to, if you try and be really broad in your appeal, you'll end up appealing to no one. You just be so boring. Yeah. So really focusing on what it is that makes you special and what you're delivering special, because you don't need thousands of people to start with.
No.
And then those people, as you build and you grow, obviously, you start to refine who it is and what you are. But I think, starting out, really just sticking to the core of who you are and really owning it, and just, and people see that and they believe. And I think, at the end of the day, people buy from people. Yeah. And so knowing the story behind you and your brand is going to help people engage with you.
And that's something that's, you can do yourself in terms of creating that story. We were talking earlier about, the About Us page. It doesn't need your life story. It needs to have, the story of your why and why you're the person to engage in that business sense, isn't it?
So true. I think a lot of businesses make the mistake with their about page of thinking it's, when it's about us, that it's all about, the life story and, or even the life story of the business. But really what that about page is about showing why you're the best business or the best provider, best product maker to deliver something to the person that's looking for the thing that they're looking for. And I think the other thing, and that comes through remembering that you're, part of the words, I guess, that you put across is that you are not your audience. Really once you understand what it is you're doing, you can be a bit clearer about who you want to talk to and who you want to engage with. And that's a lot of the mistake that I think businesses make, is that, their websites, we do this and we do that, instead of really putting it back
into what problem they're solving for the client or the customer, and what service will answer that problem. Excellent. And so how can a small business create, I suppose we talked about words, but also that visual branding, how can they create a visual sort of cohesiveness for their brand with visuals, especially if they're starting out? So what kind of components can help with that?
I think a lot of it, I think from the word side of it, really is getting clear, as I said, on that USP, and being able to, if someone says, what do you do, being able to say, straight away, if I'm talking to someone, I'm an SEO, website and sales page copywriter, working with businesses of all sizes to deliver them copy that, is going to sell their products. What makes me unique is that I am really down to earth, I'm approachable, I'm enthusiastic, I'm a big supporter of small business. So being able to say that and be really clear on what it is you do. And I guess I'll often put together what we call, it's a tone of voice type document, but getting really clear on what are the words you use that that really sum up what your business does and that you like and that you use. The same with what words don't you like or what don't you use, and get really clear on having, I guess, some standard brand language. I think then is also picking whether you're working with a designer or whether you're sort of starting out and using Canva and kind of coming up with your own, is basically, picking those few colours and going, right, these are the ones we're going to use. When you're using a Canva template, for example, don't just use it as it is, change it and use your colours and really stick to those. Use photos.
And make sure that it feels comfortable and aligned to you in terms of, with your colours, like, would you normally be bright and neons, or would you be more muted and, earthy or down to earth? So even if you haven't established your colour palette yet, don't have that mismatch.
And don't have that mismatch with what you're selling either, I guess, or whatever it is you're providing. And in terms of working out what you're who you're engaging with. So, if your audience is largely, over 60s, for example, you're not going to use lots of like quirky emojis and slang and acronyms and things like that.
References that may not be...
pop culture references or, colours that, and, images that mightn't mean anything to them. So it really is about, understanding you and understanding who it is you're talking to. And that's, really in establishing, I guess, part of that brand story is knowing who your ideal customer is and coming down to that, that even one person that you can think of every time you're writing something or you're putting a visual together, you've got that picture in your head, whether it's a friend. And this is the thing I always find interesting. If you ask someone to talk about their business as if they were telling a friend what they were doing, it's so much easier. And so if that's the person you have in mind when you created your service or created your product,
talk to them.
What would resonate with them. And again, it comes back to also, where we shop, where we tell these stories and where we're talking about our brand, because I think that's the other thing. And obviously you'll have other people come in and that are more expert in that, but I think that's the other thing is when people are starting out, they think I've got to have this brand everywhere, but it's about working out what works for you and what feels comfortable. So, there's no point putting all this effort in and trying to do, dances on TikTok if it makes you feel uncomfortable, but also if it doesn't align with your brand and it's not relevant. And I think that's again where cutting out the noise and not just doing things because other people are doing it is super, super valuable.
And that's it. And I think that showing up in the right places, and there's a lot that even, I'll keep going back to and go, okay, well, why are we doing it? As much as it might feel like you're harping on about it. It actually is the most important part to get right in your business, because all your decisions are based on understanding that why. And so opportunities may come in and you might go, oh, that's really good. But actually I can refer back to my vision, my brand, why, my goals. It gives you a really good indication of that's not for us right now, or that's a really good opportunity. And especially, as you said, with starting out, it can be so overwhelming of where to start. So what sort of advice would you give for a new to business brand? What sort of key, maybe 3 things could they be looking at today?
I think the first thing is to, as you said, sit down and be really clear on, if it's a service, what is that service that you're providing, you know, and it might only be one element of it, and really focusing on that and do it really well.
Yeah.
So, you know, for example, as a copywriter, if I was just starting out again, I might go, I'm going to do website copy, and that's all I'm going to do, and that's all I'm going to talk about. And that's what I'll get known for.
Yeah.
But then going that next step, well, why am I the best person to do that? And then getting clear on, well, what sorts of things do people need to know about that service? Yeah. But also, what problem am I solving for them? And I think if you can get really granular and really, really clear on what it is you do,
yeah,
and who you're doing it for. So when you start out, you might just say, you know, regardless of what service it is, you might say, I'm just going to talk to regional businesses that are no bigger than 5 people.
Yeah.
And it can feel when you're starting out, because you just want, you know, and I always joke when I started out,
domination.
You want or it's like, I'll take anyone that's got a credit card and a pulse that's going to give me work.
Yeah.
And it can be really hard. And sometimes it's a case of doing that work and then working out that it's not the right thing. So when I was starting out, you know, I had one client who I was writing copy for, and then they said, oh, can you do some social media captions as well? Which then sort of expanded into me going and taking some photos.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't the right fit.
Yeah.
So sometimes there is a bit of experiment, and I think part of, you know, that bit of experiment and, you know, failure as well is also part of building that brand as well, and understanding that you might necessarily start with a fully formed idea. And I guess that's probably the other thing I would say was, if you have been going a little while, really going back and looking at how your brand or how your business has evolved. And
it's okay for it to evolve and then have another reflection, review, adapt, change, and create an evolved brand identity. Like, it's you change in your business, so your business is allowed to evolve and change too.
And it's really important, and this is what I often say to people, you know, your website's not written in stone. You can go in and change it, and it's really important to keep changing it, particularly in those early years where, you know, your growth's probably quite rapid. It mightn't feel like it. It might feel like it's a really slow burn. But if you go back and look at where you were 12 months ago to now, you know, there's a lot of experience that you had. Is the story that you've been telling, and is the way that you talk about your brand really, you know, does it still fit?
Yeah.
And does it still resonate? And have you found that maybe the people you perhaps thought you were serving, maybe it is a slightly different group? You might have worked out that you actually, you know, you might be better off on LinkedIn or somewhere like that. You might have found that that's where your connections are. So to me, a brand story isn't something you write once. You know, like any of the copy, anything around our business is the same with the visual side of our brand. It isn't something you do once and then just
it's not
just
not
leave.
set and forget, is it?
No. And I think that's the thing, like any of these things, and it is going back. And one of the great ways to work out those things as you evolve is, you know, what do people say about you? You know, looking at your testimonials. What do people say when they've worked with you? You know, going back to working out how you describe your brand. Ask your friends, like, what are the 3 words that come to mind when they think about you?
Yeah.
And that can often be a really good indicator of the person you are.
Yeah.
That then is a good way to kind of go forward. So
And they're all really good, tips, and they're things that you want to get right at the start, but you can do that on a, limited budget as well. But then the value is that as you do grow and scale, you've got a really clear sense of who you are, what your brand is, to then be able to engage professional services. So whether it's graphic designers, copywriters, photographers, because if you're aligned with your brand and your values, they're going to see that and give you, take you to that next level, aren't they?
So much easier to work with a client, and it can feel really hard when someone comes to a copywriter and then suddenly I give them a whole lot of homework and say, well, I need to understand this. But it's really hard to write copy if you don't have a good sense of who that person is. So again, I'll ask that, who are you? What do you do? Who do you do it for? What problems are you solving? What do people say when they're working with you? So that's all really important. And they're the questions you can ask yourself when you're starting out and still come up with it, to work through. But again, it's not, you haven't got to get it, and it's, there's no right or wrong to this either. There's no such thing as getting your brand wrong, I don't think. And the only time it would be wrong is if it's a kind of made up thing and you've tried to be something that you're not. It might, if it doesn't feel right, it will be really hard to just show up. So, I think it's that, and it's a bit cliched, but it's that, be yourself, everyone else is taken.
Yeah.
And, not everyone's going to like you either. So,
but no, I think that's really good. There's lots of, key things that you can use from working that out, because that's also could be content that you can use that, hey, my name is, I'm so-and-so, I love to do this, their social media posts, they're the things that you can absolutely be using to introduce and be talking about.
Definitely. And, your values and the, what's important to you and what your business stands for is part of your brand as well. So, if you're an eco business, it's about, that's what you stand for and how that affects how you do business. Yeah. But also part of that story can be, well, why? What brought you to that? Like, why did you come to doing what you do? And I think the other thing is, a lot of us that are starting small business have done lots of other things in the past. And that's part of our brand that makes us really unique and really embracing. So for a long time, I thought my experience as a diplomat wasn't at all linked to being a copywriter. Yeah. And yet I realised I had 20 odd years of not just the writing side of it, but a lot of the experience I had about being organised, talking to people, negotiating solutions,
digesting all of that to then put into,
reports and things like that. That all made me a better copywriter. So I think that's the other thing, that if you've come to your business from something else, and Shelley, I know it's something you always talk about in your experience as a winemaker. Some people might look at that and go, well, what's that got to do with the things that you've done since? But there's so many skills that we pick up through our working life and our experience. Yeah. And again, I think it's really important, and it's almost part of the great thing about being a solo business owner, because you can really embrace that. That's part of what makes your business different to someone doing the same thing as you, but who doesn't have that experience.
And that's valuing your place in the business, because it's always hard being a solo business owner and having some boundaries there. Like it's a double-edged sword sometimes, but I think valuing what you bring to it and then create that brand, as an extension of you with some healthy boundaries put in place is the best way to go forward. So to be unashamedly you and your brand and be confident in that is the key.
So true. And it doesn't mean you have to share everything, and it doesn't mean you have to be constantly, taking videos of everything you do. But if you can just, I guess get comfortable with talking about what you do and talk about it in the way that you would tell a friend, and think about the customers that you've had or the clients that you've had, and the happy clients and those sorts of things, and share that all builds on, that all helps you to build that brand story. And it's hard when you're starting out because you might feel that, you don't have anything yet to work on. So I think it is just that case of taking a step back and going, how did I get from not having a business to having a business? And, what drives me to do it? And then that gives you a foundation to build on.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for joining us today and all your insights into building a strong brand identity. We certainly have, I'm really grateful for all of your insights as well, because you've, had a lot of exposure to lots of different sizes of business as well. And that, brand voice you certainly get right, but it's also getting it right from the start is achievable as well. So.
Yep. And you've got to start somewhere with it, and keep tweaking and keep testing and changing, and the longer you do it, the more you will, you'll see what actually feels right. But just at the end of the day, just being yourself and your business, and being really, owning the fact that you're delivering something really special and unique that no one else is.